and welcome back to the Second and Two podcast with your boy TB. I'm your host and my co-host, my producer, my guy. He's a true dog, Jody. What's up, Joe?
What's good, bro? I to you and the fans listening or watching, whatever the case may be, Second and Two podcast, YouTube, go subscribe. You can see I'm just a black square at the moment, right?
Yeah.
I
was
wanted to
wondering
make
about that.
sure, I wanted to make sure you got to see this live reaction of my guy TB as I unveil what has been the big secret of the day I've been telling him about. So without further ado, here we go.
Dude's got Eagles jersey on. Is that a Westbrook jersey?
Yes, sir. Brian
What?
Westbrook, what do you know?
Brian Westbrook. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, bro. Wow. I'm blown away right now. You knew that was going to get me too.
Yeah,
Where'd you
that's
get
why
that?
I got it from my uncle. I actually have a TO as well that he got me.
That's
So,
impressive.
so yeah, I could give you a little story time as I told you earlier in the day. Growing up, I actually was like low key an Eagles fan. I was big on the like 06 to like 2012 Eagles. Maybe even a little earlier than that. Maybe like 2010. I don't know. But like maybe from like 5 to like 10 or 12 years old, I was a big on the Eagles. They had, Donovan McNabb, Brian Westbrook as I'm wearing, Asante Samuel, Brian Dawkins, T.O. at one point, Javon Curse, Trent Cole, I don't know. So I have a lot of their stuff from like early on in like that time frame, 2000, like 6-ish, just because like all my family was always buying me that stuff. So here we are.
Okay. Respect, bro. So, before we get going into the Super Bowl, I just want to say that I'm really disappointed in myself because last weekend I drove to Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl, which I'm not disappointed in myself for going to that. That was pretty cool. But I lost my AirPods on the way.
Oh,
The second gen AirPods that I have that I loved. I've got my first gen AirPods in right now. But the reason that I love AirPods are because I love talking on the phone with them in, just because I can be like doing whatever it is I'm doing without
hands-free.
having to hold the phone. Yeah, hands free, bro. I don't have to hold the phone up. It's so much better, so much easier, right? Or I can be listening to my podcast, doing whatever I'm doing, right?
Mhm.
And what I've remembered, so when I lost them, pretty sure I left them at a gas station in the middle of Alabama.
Oh,
Yeah. So those things are gone. I think I might have even accidentally thrown them away. If I replay the events in my head, I'm not really sure. I've checked everywhere. I did the Find My iPhone app, Find My AirPods. They're gone. So anybody who's going to tell me, hey, go do this, it's gone. They're gone. All right. I've accepted it. Don't give me hope. So what I realized is like, I still got my first gen AirPods. It'll be okay. I'll go throw those in. I'll be fine. Well, what I realized is part of the reason I got these second generation AirPods because my first generation AirPods, the microphones on them don't work that well. So like if I'm on the phone, sometimes they just cut out and then people can't hear me. And I'm like talking and it's the worst thing because I can hear them, but they can't hear me because the microphones on them don't work that well.
Okay.
So I'm
Did
really
you happen to
frustrated.
wash these by any chance?
No, I just think
Okay.
that they're kind of older. They've been around for a little while. They've
Yeah.
been used, It's like, all right, well, so I'm really disappointed in the fact that I lost my newer AirPods. I'd had those ones for about 16 months, so it wasn't like they're brand new or anything. Like I'd had them for a year and a half almost, but still pretty big bummer. So yep, lost those, but great experience in Alabama, great experience in Mobile. Got to be on the sideline for the Senior Bowl. Got to meet a bunch of people, talk to a bunch of people, be around big dudes. I'm gonna tell you, like, there's a couple guys that I really like coming up in the draft from that experience and being around them and seeing them live and in person and on the sideline and how they respond to coaching and all those things. Like, really awesome experience. But we'll get there later down the road when we talk about the draft. We still got football games to be played, or a football game, and that is the football game.
I was gonna say some people would call it the football.
The bowl, bro. The Super Bowl. The Super Bowl. It's finally here. Super Bowl Sunday coming up this weekend. Super Bowl 57, Joe. Does that make you feel old or young?
57. Shoot, I'd say maybe old, just because we've been around since they were in the 30s, bro. That's kind of wild, right?
Yeah.
31, at least I came into existence. You had a little bit more time under your belt. You might have caught the first one. Me, not so much. I think they were still doing them in January at that time. But well, the Broncos, shout out them. They won that year. That was the start of the back-to-back, I believe, or the second one. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no. 57. It's a lot, man. Once we got rid of like the X in front of the L, that was a whole different thing within itself.
Dude, I know now it's XLII or
It's just L,
LVII.
bro.
Yeah, LVII now. We're at 57. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So we got Super Bowl 57 this Sunday, 6:30 Eastern Time, 3:30 Pacific if you're over there on the West Coast like Jody. In Glendale, Arizona, State Farm Stadium, on the grass, the rolled in grass. Philly is going to be wearing the green, the vaunted green that Jody's sporting today. And KC is going to be wearing their road whites. Jody, do you want to explain for the listeners and watchers what we're going to be doing today?
Yeah, so we're gonna be breaking down the matchups of each like position or whatever you want to call them. So we got O line versus D line comparison for each team. So Eagles O line versus the Chiefs D line, vice versa. And then same with skill positions, coaching. Going down the line of all that. TB is gonna give you his expert analysis on what he sees, what he thinks will help out the teams, what they should do differently to help better their chances, whatnot. And yeah, so every now and again I'll sprinkle in some stats. Who knows if they fit the categories and whatnot. But yeah, that's what it's come down to. Breaking down each category and telling you what we think at the end of all this.
Well, Joe, I don't want to stop you. You're on a roll right now, but very flattered that you called me an expert over here.
Yeah.
Don't know that I would consider myself an expert, but I will tell our audience I try and watch as much tape and be as informed as I can, try and give you what I'm thinking. But what I'm thinking is not necessarily always the right way, nor does it always match up with what these coaches are thinking. That's the fun part about this. Try and test yourself and see if you're thinking like these NFL coaches are.
Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a game of chess. Who moves the right pieces to make things work
That's
out in
why I
their
love
favor?
football, baby. That's why I love football. People don't understand. It's really truly is. You got to be really smart to play because you can't just run out there and just run and hit people. You got to be able to understand where to go first before you go get to hit anybody.
Yeah, true. You can hit people, but if you're hitting the right guy, who knows?
There we go.
So yeah, kicking us off, we know how we do down in the trenches. We got the Eagles O line and the Chiefs D line. The Eagles O line, we got left tackle Jordan Mailata, left guard Landon Dickerson. The center, everyone knows this guy. His brother's on another team. We got Jason Kelsey. Let's see, right guard Isaac Siamalu, and then the right tackle Lane Johnson. Let's see, Chiefs D line. We got George Karlaftis, or he's the DN. I don't know why I said D line twice right there. D tackle. We got Chris Jones. Talked about him a couple weeks back. The nose. We got Kalen Sanders or Saunders. I don't know. We got to get technical there. The other DN on the opposite side of George, we got Frank Clark, and then an edge rusher, Carlos Dunlap.
Yeah, man. So the games are still won in the trenches, despite what people might enjoy watching or people focus on. So we got to start with this game with the battles up front because, they're going to be arguably the most critical to who's going to win this game. I think you're going to hear me talk about it multiple times. You heard me talk about it last week in our little preview before we even got into the film and before we even got into this. We were talking about this matchup up front. It's the Eagles O-line. They have two first-team All-Pro players with Kelsey and Lane Johnson, all pro, both first team. Like Kelsey, best center in the league, Lane Johnson, best right tackle in the league. And then they had two other players who were voted top 5 in their position by the Players Union this year, and that was left guard Landon Dickerson and left tackle Jordan Mailata. So when you look at it, a lot of people around the league, in the league, playing, covering, coaching would tell you that 4 of their dudes are top 5 at their position. And then the 5th one, right guard Isaac Siamalu, he was ranked like number 8 at right guards for all right guards by PFF. I know some people like PFF, some people don't, whatever you think of them. Regardless, I think the Eagles have 5 above average starters in totality. And they dominated consistently all year long. They never had a game where they gave up more than 4 sacks. And there was only a couple games where they even gave up that many. They were able to run the football. And so I think you're going to see a truly veteran offensive line that's been here. Obviously, Kelsey and Lane Johnson, a part of that Super Bowl when they won it a few years ago. And then also sprinkling in some younger guys like Mailata, who's just come along and been a beast. You look at the Chiefs on the other side, they've got one of the best D tackles in football, Chris Jones. And then you have a trio of really competent pass rushers with Karlaftis, who's a rookie this year that has been part of that really good rookie class for the Chiefs. Frank Clark, who's been around for a little while and has been consistently pretty good toward down the stretch of a season. And then Carlos Dunlap, who's like the savvy veteran at this point, been with a few different teams, has given them some added pass rushing up front this year. And then I even like the big fella, Kalen Sanders inside. So the Chiefs certainly gave the Bengals all they could handle. They created 5 sacks, 12 quarterback hits in the AFC Championship game. After probably not creating enough pressure on Trevor Lawrence in the divisional round, they only generated 2 sacks and 7 quarterback hits in the divisional round against Jacksonville. But last week we discussed the similarity in looks that the Chiefs and the 49ers were given up front in both championship games, right? We talked about that wide front, 4 eyes and 9s. We watched that film and the way that the Eagles O-line handled that look from the Niners pretty well, right? So we could kind of see there's some consistency in the looks, and the Eagles performed really well. The Chiefs performed really well. So that's a fun matchup there. I'd argue that the Niners have more talent up front and do even more with their games and things that they run up front than the Chiefs D-line does. So while I think the Chiefs may be able to scheme up some success in creating some one-on-ones for Chris Jones specifically, I'm not sure they're going to be stout enough against the Eagles rushing attack up front. That's where I have a real question mark for them. And if you put all that together, I do think there's a clear edge in this category. And so if I had to pick an edge for who has it here in this, the Eagles O-line versus the Chiefs D-line, I would say the Eagles have an edge going into this game in that matchup specifically. Joe, you see anything different or have anything that you thought?
Yeah, so I was looking at their schedules, right? I did this a couple weeks ago with some other games. I don't remember which ones, but looked at the similarities because they never played each other all year. They played different divisions, whatnot. But one thing they had in common, you mentioned it, kind of. They both played the Niners at a point in time. And so when the Chiefs played the Niners back in week 7, they won 44-23. And then the Eagles just played them 2 weeks ago in the conference finals. And they beat them, of course, 31-7. And you were talking about the fronts with the 4 and 9 eyes, or 4 eyes and 9s. Sorry. Let's see. Let me 1, 2, third game. So this was actually the start of when Purdy started, when the Chiefs were playing them. And so the Niners had 1 sack, 1 pick against the Chiefs. And then the Chiefs got 423 passing yards with 3 touchdowns, 115 rushing, 3 touchdowns. So 6 total on the day, with 5 sacks and 2 picks in their favor. And when the Eagles played them a couple weeks back, they allowed 1 sack for the Niners. They only passed for 121 yards, rushed for 150, and then they had 3 sacks. I don't know how I didn't put down any touchdowns in here, but yeah, so one thing that they both did is they got pressure on those quarterbacks. The Chiefs were able to get a couple turnovers for themselves, and they just dominated that defense. 423 and 115. They had, was that like 540 on the day almost yards? That's insane.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's one thing I was taking a little gander at, seeing what teams they all played in similarities. There was a total of 5. It was the Jags, the Colts, Niners, Texans, and Titans, and the Jags played the Chiefs twice. As you also talked about in there, which they, ironically enough, the Chiefs scored 27 points both times. Now that I'm looking at it.
No, yeah, I think interesting to look at the kind of the crossover comparison, just because you don't have a point of, okay, did these teams play each other? They played last year, but it was last year, I believe, earlier in the season, in the first half of the season. So just not much. I think it was like week 5 of 2021. So that's over a year and a half ago now. There's not much you can take from that. So I do like kind of the idea of looking at some of the cross matchups here with teams that they've played. Or that they both.
Even then, the Chiefs weren't even the same team they are now.
They had Hill, they had Tyreek.
Exactly.
Yeah. Completely different.
All right, so moving forward, we're moving to the Chiefs O-line, the Eagles D-line. At least I talked about the Eagles D-line quite a bit in recent times. So I'll start there. They got DN, Brandon Graham, and Josh Sweat. The D tackle, Javon Hargrave. Their nose, Fletcher Cox, and then another edge rusher, the guy's Hassan Reddick. Chiefs O-line consists of left tackle Orlando Brown, left guard Joe Thuney. Their center is Creed Humphrey, right guard Trey Smith, and right tackle Andrew Wiley.
Yeah, the Chiefs lost the 2021 Super Bowl to Tampa in part because their offensive line was old and it was beat up. And since then, they've done a really masterful job of revamping and reinvigorating that group with young talent, trading for Orlando Brown, drafting Creed Humphrey, while also adding an experienced veteran in Joe Thuney. This is a group that has only allowed 3 sacks and 11 hits on their quarterback in 2 playoff games combined this year. That's pretty good. And in previous matchups with the Bengals, the Bengals had schemed up looks to get Orlando Brown in one-on-one situations a lot. A lot of people have kind of talked about him maybe being the weak link of that offensive line at left tackle. And this year in the AFC Championship game, he played a lot better. I'm not going to tell you that he dominated by any stretch of the imagination, but he played much better. He didn't give up the critical sack, that to hurt Mahomes or anything like that. So I think the Eagles will look to attack him. But if the AFC Championship game is any, indication, I think he'll be able to hold up a little bit better than maybe people would have predicted going into these playoffs. On the other side, the Eagles feature, one of the best pass rushing groups the league has seen in a while. Like, they recorded a franchise record 70 sacks in the regular season this year. And, you saw like Brandon Graham. He recovered from a torn Achilles. He's 34. And a guy comes back with 11 sacks, which, by the way, how is he not up for comeback player of the year? Like, I didn't hear anyone talk about him for comeback player of the year. He's a 34-year-old coming off a torn Achilles. He has 11 sacks. How is that not a bigger story? So just props to Brandon Graham.
That's all it is.
Yeah, he doesn't play offense. There you go. Hassan Reddick had by far the best year of his career. He had 16 sacks. So just those 2 guys alone, 27 sacks, And then in the playoffs, this group has notched another 8 sacks, 15 quarterback hits. They just continue their dominant trend right now. They're going to get hits on your quarterback. They're going to get sacks. And the real determining factor in this matchup, I think, is actually going to be the run game. I think the Chiefs, they can run the ball. And if they can run the ball a little bit here, slow the Eagles pass rush just enough, I think they can give Mahomes the time he needs. I wouldn't put it past Andy Reid to call, heavy run and screen early in the game just to keep those Eagles pass rushers at bay for a little bit as Mahomes settles and we make sure his ankle's feeling okay and whatnot. Just because that Eagles pass rush is really good. let his offensive line settle, feel the speed of a guy like Hassan Reddick, who's just been beating everyone with his first step all year. A lot of quick game, that kind of thing, before we get into longer developing shot balls or intermediate balls over the middle, that kind of thing. I think they likely will run the football, screen game, quick game right now, get the ball out of Mahomes' hands just to help Mahomes get into the game and help that offensive line get into the game and feel that speed. Because I don't know that they've played a whole lot of defenses that have the ability to pass rush like the Eagles do. Still, the Eagles pass rush has just been so dominant. It's hard to ignore that the impact that they could have on this game and on, as well as he played in the Bengals game, a still compromised Mahomes. Like, he's still playing on a high ankle sprain. We can't discount that. I know it's 3 weeks removed now. He's had a couple weeks to rest it up. He should be better. But even against the Bengals, there were a couple moments where you could tell that thing's not 100%. So when you put all that together, I still think there's an edge for the Eagles here and up front. So on both offensive and defensive lines, I think the Eagles have an edge, and we'll get there down the road here, but I do think my question is just going to be, how big is that edge in this game?
Yeah, no. So looking at the games I told you about that they played in common, the Chiefs allowed a total of 7 sacks in those same teams matchups, while the Eagles, they had 15 against those same teams. So I mean, that's one thing we'll be looking at with this defense right here. They're more than able to get pressure on that quarterback for sure.
Yeah.
But you talked about running the ball, right? Actually,
Yeah.
I'll save that for this next topic. We'll get in that right now. But yeah, no, we'll see what these defensive players could do. Obviously I somewhat like them. I talked about them multiple times in our Big Fella Awards. But it'll be interesting to see, no doubt, because Patty Mahomes, he obviously has that ability to scramble, but who knows if he's obviously feeling better. It's just how much better. So
Yeah.
we'll keep it pushing to where I could talk about these running backs after your analysis. But we got the Eagles offensive, or I guess running backs, and then linebacker core. I'm going to do the same with the Chiefs. And so we got the Eagles defense being the linebackers of Kazir White and TJ Edwards, matching up with the running backs of Isaiah Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon, and Ronald Jones. Maybe even CHE. I heard they activated him.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then flipping it over to the Eagles, their running backs consists of Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, while the Chiefs linebackers come out to Willie Gay and Nick Bolton. So what are your thoughts?
I'm glad you brought up I'm glad you brought up Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He did just get activated. I'm not sure if he's going to play any kind of role here. I would anticipate if he does, he replaces Ronald Jones. Obviously, Pacheco and McKinnon are major weapons for them. Rojo kind of played sparingly. And I would anticipate if Clyde Edwards-Helaire is active for the game, he's kind of used in that sparing role. I don't know that he's going to get a whole lot of touches here. But it is important to note that he could be back because he came off the IR. But let's start with the Eagles backers versus those Chiefs running backs. I love Isaiah Pacheco. How can you not love a dude who was a 7th round pick from Rutgers that just runs with that chip on his shoulder every time he has the ball? It's not even a chip; it's a boulder. He really is a. I think he was your dog of the week last week, if I remember right.
That's correct.
So
he was running with that power I was talking about. Just
yeah,
like you said, just chip on his shoulder. The man, he's up running downhill always, not much side to side. Just he's taking on any contact he can, and even then, he's still hard to tackle.
yeah. I mean, he's given this offense a real boost this year. Then you have Jerick McKinnon. He's been the perfect back to pair with Mahomes in the pass game. They can split him out. They can isolate him on backers out of the backfield. He's got major yak ability. Yep, major yak ability. Between him and Pacheco, it's kind of a nice little duo there. Pacheco's given them a lot of what they thought they were going to get from Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which is that like power dynamic to their offense, that physicality to their offense with the ball in his hands. I think that's really what they were hoping to get from CEH. And then McKinnon has actually given them that dynamic back out of the backfield, which I think they also thought Clyde Edwards-Helaire might be able to do a little bit of, and this is not to say Clyde Edwards-Helaire still can't be those things. He just hasn't been, I think, what they were hoping for in a first round pick when they drafted him, but they found those things in Pacheco and McKinnon. And then you look at the Eagles linebackers; they've been really productive this year. To me, the fact that Kaiser White and TJ Edwards have held Nakobe Dean from playing a whole lot of snaps is really impressive. Just because I thought Nakobe Dean was a surefire starter coming out of the Georgia. He was one of my favorite backers in the draft. You watch the tape, that guy's so smart, instinctive, fast, like physical, all the things you want in a linebacker. He's a little smaller, but man, if that's all that it is, like I want that guy on my team. And these two have played so well that he really hasn't gotten on the field a whole lot. So I really like that duo. I think it speaks to, their work that they've put in. And still, I think the pair of Chiefs backs presents a real pass game matchup nightmare for any linebacker in the league. The Eagles were 24th in yards per carry given up this year, which could make up, for a big game from either Pacheco or McKinnon, maybe even both. I talked about earlier, maybe the Chiefs trying to run the ball a little bit more early just to kind of get their offensive line in the game. McKinnon certainly figures to be a factor in quick passing game. Would not be surprised to see him get, 4 or 5 touches just in the first quarter. And then, on the other side, the Eagles use a trio of running backs that all do different things really well, right? Miles Sanders was a Pro Bowler this year. He averaged 4.9 yards a carry, scored 11 touchdowns. He's kind of really their every down back, their workhorse. He can do a little bit of everything. He can pass protect. He can carry the ball. You can throw him the ball out of the backfield. He can do a lot of different stuff. He's really versatile. But then you can bring in Boston Scott, and he's able to spell him on early rundowns. He averaged 4 yards a carry this year, and the Eagles don't feel like they have much drop off from one guy to the next. I also think Scott has some bright moments in pass protection as well. He also is a returner for them, which we'll kind of touch later when we talk about special teams. But Boston Scott provides a lot of value as well. And then finally, you get to Kenneth Gainwell, who I talked about last week when we were featuring him, when we talked about those Eagles empty formations. Really like him as a pass catcher. He also averaged 4.3 yards per carry, over 7 yards per reception this year. So I think all three of those backs give you something a little different, but they can all do a little bit of everything too, right? They have like their thing that all three of them major in, but all three of them are flexible enough that you can do anything with them on the field, which does give the Eagles a nice dynamic. I mean, that's an impressive group. There aren't a whole lot of teams that can say they have three backs that all averaged over 4 yards a carry. And, you look at the Chiefs linebackers, they have a couple dudes who I do like. Nick Bolton is a tackling machine. He was not a Pro Bowler this year. A lot of people said he was, like a Pro Bowl snub. I don't know if we can say that when the two guys he lost out on were both pretty good. So, I'm not saying that he was a snub, but I am saying that, in a normal year, he might be a Pro Bowler if he wasn't playing in the same conferences like two all-world talents with Roquan Smith in Baltimore and CJ Mosley in New York. So I don't think we can say, oh, he wasn't a Pro Bowler. He's not that good. I mean, he had over 100 tackles this year. He did a pretty good job, and maybe in a normal year would be a Pro Bowler. And then he's playing next to Willie Gay, who's just a playmaker. I like this young duo for the Chiefs. They're fast, they're physical, they can do a little bit of everything. You'll see Willie Gay, rush the passer. They can both play downhill run. They can both cover a little bit. They can both pass rush. And I think they match up well with the Eagles' backs because they can rival their flexibility and versatility pretty well. So overall, I do think these will be some fun matchups, but I'm going to give a slight edge here to the Chiefs. I think the duo of McKinnon and Pacheco can give the Eagles linebackers more problems than that trio with the Eagles can give the Chiefs linebackers. So I do think it's close. I think there's a couple fun wrinkles in here, but I'm going to give the edge to McKinnon and Pacheco with the Chiefs backers here.
Yeah, you brought up the rushing attack. Obviously, we're talking about the running backs, but you're saying the averages. Sorry, the averages that they have per carry. I
Mm-hmm.
would say there's some sort of correlation between like them performing with rushing the balls and in terms of passing. obviously the Chiefs are gonna be better at that just because they got Patty Mahomes slinging it like crazy every week, throwing up
Yeah.
like 250 plus, like average easy. And on the flip side, they got Jalen Hurts being thrown into the rushing game and not really passes nearly as much as Patty Mahomes. But
Yeah.
one thing that stood out to me, this might be a cool little spot for the Titans, but that's one game where they both rushed for only like 70 yards if you want to average it. The Chiefs ran for 77 and the Eagles ran for 67. But that being said, they were slinging the rock like crazy for like out of all these games, this is the most passing yards they had for the Eagles was 380. But yeah, no,
Mm.
each game, they both won every game of these matchups, but the Chiefs were throwing the ball way more than them clearly, and they all were rushing like crazy. We got what there was 3 games, sorry, 5 games for the Chiefs, but they had an extra one being the Jags. They played them twice, where they rushed for over 100, like 20. And then for the Eagles, it was every game but that Titans game. They rushed for
Mm.
over 120 easy. So it's just
Mm.
interesting how the Eagles are clearly way more reliant on rushing the ball, but also comes from plays where you get scrambles, and that's what Jalen Hurts is taking off more. Obviously, his design runs as well, but
Mhm.
he's more susceptible to just being like, "Oh shoot, it's broken. I'm gonna take off." So it's a
Yeah.
little bit skewed in that sense in terms of rushing the ball, but they do rely more on running than passing. Let's see. So talking about throwing the ball now, it's gonna be a little bit more. I'll be able to bring in more of these passing numbers for this. We're going to go basically the skill positions and the secondaries for these teams. So we'll start off with the Chiefs offensive core, and then we'll do the Eagles DBs, and then we'll flip it again later. I won't hit you back to back like that. So Chiefs got Patty Mahomes quarterback. What is that? Marquez Valdez Scantling. That's his real name.
Mhm.
Or MVS, keep it short. Juju Smith Schuster, Kadarius Toney, and Travis Kelce. And then the Eagles defensive backs, or secondary as we should call them. They got James Bradbury, Darius Slay. Their safeties consist of Reed Blankenship, that's your guy. What was he, 32?
Mhm.
uh, CJ Gardner Johnson, and then Avante Maddox. Has he been playing? I don't even remember.
Yeah, he's been back, yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, when we start with the Chiefs offense here, I think a lot of people were worried when Mahomes lost his best target in the offseason, right? When the Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill to the Dolphins. Um, but he's answered those worries emphatically by having arguably the best season of his career. You know, he's used more multiplicity of weapons that the Chiefs have to counter the loss of Tyreek. You know, he threw for more yards in his career than he ever has, second most touchdowns. He had multiple games where he completed passes to more than 7 Chiefs receivers in that same game. And some of those weapons, you know, Juju, MVS, Kadarius Toney, Travis Kelce, you know, in the AFC Championship game, Toney, Juju, and Mecole Hardman all got hurt. You know, and early indications suggested that Mahomes will have Juju and Kadarius Toney in this game. Probably no Mecole Hardman though. So we'll see
I think
how
he might
that.
be on IR.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But the trio of Juju, MVS, and Kelsey all had over 650 yards receiving this year. Toney was a bright spot after the trade. They get him the ball in a lot of unique ways, not just throwing him the ball. They'll give him a lot of handoffs and things like that too. They have no longer quite have the explosiveness they once had with Tyreek Hill, but they can beat you in the intermediate and the short passing game. I think they have these unique concepts, variety of weapons, and I think it's forced Mahomes to be a little bit more patient, make a few less mistakes, just trusting Tyreek. You know, so you have less explosives, but you also have less mistakes. I think he's been a little bit less gunslinger without Tyreek Hill, which makes sense, right? If you had that guy that you really trusted and you're just like, hey, I can just throw it out there and he's going to go get it 9 times out of 10. And if that 1 out of 10 is a pick, like, okay, you know, I think that's kind of his attitude with Tyreek. And now when you don't have that, think it's forced him to be a little bit more process oriented, go through his reads a little more, maybe not be so quick to just like, I'm going to take the shot on this one, regardless, just because I trust my guy so much. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's a luxury to have, right?
Yeah.
But I think, losing that, you also lost some of the mistakes. And so I think there was a little bit of a trade-off there. And Mahomes is so good that I think he's going to make it work with whoever you've got. And there's always just, the unbelievable talent of Mahomes to just create and extend plays, even when the offense breaks down. So you always have that too. And then on the other side, the Eagles have a pretty impressive secondary with All-Pro James Bradbury, Pro Bowler Darius Slay, and then Football Writers first team All-Conference safety CJ Gardner-Johnson. Reed Blankenship, real physical safety that we highlighted against the run in the divisional round against the Giants. He plays really well against the run in the box. And then you also have Avonte Maddox, who's been pretty impressive as their nickel corner. Overall, the group has been pretty good. They've created 14 takeaways, 14 interceptions specifically between the 5 of them this year. They all have at least one. And I think they're very feast or famine. If you look at them, they have those 14 picks, but on the other side of it, the best quarterbacks they played this year, they gave up a lot of yards too, and a lot of points. Aaron Rodgers and Dak Prescott were probably the 2 best quarterbacks they played. And against both those teams, they gave up 33 plus points. And they let both those quarterbacks throw the ball for a lot of yards. So I do think they're a very feast or famine where they're going to get picks. They're also going to give up some big plays if you're playing the right quarterback. And they haven't seen anybody like even in the stratosphere of Mahomes this year. And Aaron Rodgers and Dak Prescott are both good, but I don't think their seasons that they just had this season were not what Mahomes was. Obviously, Mahomes is likely the MVP. Neither one of those guys is there with Mahomes, So I think you're going to see, they have the goods to match up with the Chiefs receivers and make life difficult on Mahomes, but I still think you have to give an edge to Mahomes and this receiver group when you flip on the tape here, which we're going to do. We're going to go flip it on. All right. So I'm going to show you a formation that I think could be important in this game, and that is empty. All right. And here's why I think that. I think the Eagles have struggled a little bit versus empty this year. If you watch some tape, this is that game against the Cowboys when they didn't have Hurts, right? Game ended up being 40-34. So as I said, Dak put up points on him. He put up yards too. So this first play, it's 1st and 10. Dallas got the ball on their own 36. They're going to go empty, and they're going to run what we call the smash scheme concept, which is the slot fade. And then they're going to run the smash concept at the bottom with the little controlled slant to it. Up front, Philly's running a 3-man front, but they're going to bring Hassan Reddick off the edge with a jack go. So they're going to end up rushing 4 with their 3 up front, their 3-0-3 front, and then Hassan Reddick off the edge. And then they're going to play cover 4 behind it. So you kind of see how this plays out. So with quarters, you're going to have both safeties play the vertical of 1. And then the corner is going to read, right? If he gets a vertical, 2 verticals, he'll stick with 1. If he gets 1 vertical, then he's going to double the vertical with the safety. So if 1 sits it down, he'll go double 2 on the vertical. Same thing over here. Now you've got your flat defenders here. This is the nickel. He's going to go play the flat. The backer is going to go play the flat. And then the Mike is going to relate to 3 in quarters, which is already the strong side of empty just because they've declared this is where number 3 is, right? So you kind of see how this plays out. Boom. This is a great concept for quarters because you're going to get 1 vertical on each side. So you're going to get the double. Hey, we're going to double the corner out here. We're going to double the slot fade here. That's kind of the purpose of quarters is you get doubles on verticals. So you're not giving up explosives. And then this backer who's playing the flat, he's got to flip his hips, play back underneath this one right here. This backer is relating to 3 right there. And then this backer, or the slot, the nickel, the slot corner, he's got to get to the flat, right? He's got to keep going, rolling to the flat there. So on the scramble drill, and we'll look at what happened up front from the behind, but on the scramble drill, he doesn't get there. Dak is able to create space and time and get out there and get the ball to Tony Pollard. So you see what happens up front. They're going to bring Hassan Reddick off the edge, and he actually gets up and back underneath. He sees a lane, and gets there, but he flushes Dak out of the pocket, and they have no contained rush, no leverage rush there anymore. And Dak escapes, and when he escapes, he just finds Pollard and hits him, and it ends up being an 11-yard gain. So why that worries me is just because, okay, that's Dak. We know we've seen Mahomes do that how many times, right? A million times. And so here's an example, not necessarily of creating a play here, but just of the Chiefs being an empty, right, against the Bengals in the AFC Championship game. So where I think it could kind of play out, you're seeing empty, right? They're going to run the smash pivots. So they're going to run the smash, the corner route with Kelsey with a little pivot with Tony back underneath. Then they're going to run Juju on the pivot here, Pacheco on the post, the for the love of the game route on the backside over here. And then I believe that's Watson who's going to run the dig in the middle of the field. Now the Bengals are playing cover 3, so they're not playing quarters, right? You can see you got the flat hook, flat, third, middle of the field, and then the third player. They're going to play it match style, and we'll kind of talk about why match could be important in this game later. But you can see Mahomes and empty. The thing for him that's great is he can just dissect what you're in if you're going to rush 4 and cover with 7 and just get the ball out of his hands. And then if that ankle's good, he can buy and create time like he did against or like he has all season, right? And like Dak did against the Eagles. So here you can see it. He just gets the ball out of his hands. And this is where Mahomes is so good because he can beat you both ways, right? Like get you a quarterback who can do both. He can do both, man. He can beat you both ways, whether that's creating time, getting out of the pocket, or sitting in that thing, getting to his first, second read and getting the ball out of his hands. So in this case, I do think there is a pretty clear edge for the Chiefs, simply because as good as that Eagles secondary is, it's Mahomes and they're feast or famine. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs here.
Yeah, here's a little sprinkle to your Chiefs pick on their skill positions versus the secondary. There was, out of all those games that I mentioned earlier, there's only once they threw under 200 yards, and it was 195. All the rest were easily above 250. So they're just slinging the rock like crazy in all those games. And then, let's see. They all had... There was one game where they only had 1 touchdown pass. Or no, it was 2, sorry. I stand mistaken. They threw a pick in one of them. But there was a game with 4 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, and then a pair of 2s. But still, Patty Mahomes slings the rock like no one else, especially at how young he is. So I could agree with that statement that you got the Chiefs leading the edge on that one. Flipping it over to the Eagles skill positions, though, we got Jalen Hurts, quarterback, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, all receiver, and they got Dallas Goedert at tight end. The secondary for the Chiefs, we got Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson. Their safeties consist of Justin Reed. Is that Juan? Or
Juwan.
okay. Okay. That's why I had to ask. Hey, you never know. Maybe they got a Mexican in the secondary, you know? Juwan Thornhill, and then rounding out the core at the nickel, they got L'Jarius Sneed.
Yeah, man. The Eagles, that offense, they got a Pro Bowler, A.J. Brown. They got an All-Pro, Jalen Hurts. They got, other critical pieces, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Quez Watkins. That trio of Brown, Smith, and Goddard all had over 700 yards, and Brown and Smith each had over 1,000. So they're putting up numbers. Jalen Hurts played at an MVP level this year. If Pat Mahomes is the MVP, then Jalen Hurts is second, or vice versa. So you've got the 2 best players in the league this year playing against each other in the Super Bowl. What more can you ask for? He's clearly had the best season of his career. When allowed to diagnose coverage pre-snap, he's up there with the best quarterbacks in the league right now, just getting the ball out of his hands and beating best matchup available. All the things that I said Mahomes is so good at, being able to do both things, I think Hurts is also good at those. He's just like not quite as good as Mahomes, but he's pretty good. Like I can't say enough about how much growth he's shown from 2 years ago to this year, from last year to this year. And, he's been especially good with RPO reads this season when you look at the tape, and actually we'll give you one right now, what their RPO game has looked like. Give you one against Tennessee earlier, Jody, that they didn't run the ball as well, but they were able to throw the ball really well, right?
Yep. 380 passing with 3 TDs, rush for 67 yards, but they had 2 TDs rushing.
Yeah. So this is that game against Tennessee. This is a clip from that game. And you'll see the Eagles, they're in 2nd and 2. They love RPO on 2nd down. If you watch enough tape, they do really like to run that RPO. And so for those people, I do want to clarify what RPO means, because I feel like I see a lot of people misuse it. And this is not like a football snobbery thing. At least I hope it doesn't come off that way. I really am trying to help people understand what it means. Run pass option. That's RPO. And it's not, I think some people think it's like, okay, roll out the quarterback, he can run or pass. It's actually literally like I can hand the ball off or I can pull it and throw. Is that making sense, Joe? Am I explaining that okay for you? Do you think? Yeah.
I mean, early on, I just assumed I always didn't know what it stood for. I thought it was like run. I don't know why I thought the O was an A, so I was like run, play action or something. So it was like you could either do the run or
essentially.
Yeah.
Essentially, and here's the thing that'll let you know if you want to know, because there is a distinct difference between play action and RPO. And if you just look at the quarterback and running back, you won't know the difference between. Sometimes you can tell if the quarterback really rides it longer, but where you can see the difference is actually in the O-line. If the O-line is blocking pretty aggressively, like it's run, and he pulls it to throw, then you know it was probably RPO. Sometimes there are some RPOs where they'll even give you a fake, like the tackle will block like pass set. So if it is pull, you can throw. So it's tricky. Offenses have gotten really good, and there are still moments that I watch film and I'm like, I don't know if that was play action or if it was RPO, but most of the time I think you can figure it out. You use enough context clues. So here you go. They're in a PSO look, right, with Goddard off the hip. They've got A.J. Brown tight to him at the top of the screen. And then Quez Watkins in the slot with Devontae Smith at the bottom.
Nice, huh?
Yeah, it'd be crazy. So this is where Hurts has been so good this year, is reading the RPO. So you're going to see the Titans are in a 4-man front. They're just in an over front, but they're going to bring the slot corner, the nickel, off the edge and run a fire zone, right? 4 under 2 deep. Fire zone here. And you'll notice that this is the read player. This slot defender is the read player in their RPO look here. All right, so Jalen Hurts, his eyes on the snap when he gets the ball, he's going to look there. So you watch. And look, Jalen's looking right at him. And before he even gets to the mesh point, he knows this is got to be pass. I got to pull this right now because I'm getting blitz. I'm getting pressure off the edge, right? So he's going to pull. You can see the offensive line is blocking zone right. It's an inside zone run. And then pass-wise, this is just the replace route where he's going to replace the blitzing nickel, right? It's just like running a hitch, right over the top of where he came from. And Hurts gets the ball out to him right now. It's a positive play. It's a first down, right? 2nd and 2, they got 6-7 yards, but that 6-7 yards is a first down, and they'll take that every time. So you can see from the back end, the blocking by the O-line, and then Hurts his eyes too, right? So you can see it where he's looking. As soon as he gets eye contact with that blitzing defender, he's pulling, right? But you can see combo block here, right? And of course, they're going to leave him unblocked because he's the read player. They're going to combo over here and really should be, they're not working up to the backers quite yet because of the ability to pass, right? They'll work up there late if it's run. But you can kind of see the offensive line, right, is blocking like it's run, but Hurts pulls it like it's pass because it's a true RPO. So the tricky thing about that and where people get so upset when you coach defense is if offensive linemen are 5 yards down the field by the time the quarterback pulls it and throws it, and now we're getting a heavy run look and he's throwing the ball, which is totally unfair. And I'll go to my grave complaining about that, but that's okay. So RPO, that's what you're getting in RPO. Now, give you another example of it here, same game. This is a point where the Titans actually defended it pretty well. Now, this one, it is RPO. It falls under the umbrella of RPO, but we do call this one, you'll hear some people refer to it as RSO. It's not very, I don't think I've heard like it used in the common vernacular. Like you hear RPO from announcers all the time now. I don't know if I've heard one talk about an RSO. Maybe Greg Olson. If someone was going to do it, it's Greg Olson because he's just so knowledgeable.
I was gonna say
But
Tony Romo.
yeah, maybe Romo. But that one's run screen option. And so what it'll end up looking like is if you have like the bubble screen on, so it's still a true, I can read it, I can give the ball, or I can pull it and throw the screen. But it's just if it's horizontal, if it's lateral, like you're getting bubble, that's when we'll call RSO, like the run screen option, as opposed to RPO, like vertical down the field passing. But it's still under that umbrella of RPO. So it's another RPO here. All the Titans are doing is running a 4-eye, 0-4-eye front. We call that goggles when they're in double 4 eyes, right? 4 eyes. Got it? Goggles. And then a backer walked up here in the like a kick look where we will walk up a backer on top of the tight end here. And so you're going to get 4 eyes up front. So it's they're going to play quarter, half. So they're going to play quarters to the 3 receiver side and then, or halves to the 3 receiver side and quarters on the back side. This is a similar look. We watched this with the Chargers against the Jags a few weeks ago. Won that Jags touchdown. You remember that? So it's a similar look to that. And you'll see what he's looking at. Same thing. There's the read player in RPO, right? Where's Hurts looking? There are his eyes. You can see the bubble screen outside, right? So Hurts, his read here to kind of explain what he's reading when he's looking at that. If this guy adds, if the read player is coming downhill to play run right now, he's going to pull it and throw out to the screen because he knows his numbers are 3 offensive players versus 2 defensive players at that point. Yes, there's a safety back there. He's not counting him because that guy's 15 yards away. So you've got a one-on-one block, and then a ball carrier. So you've got numbers. So all you're doing is counting. Like, do I have numbers out there? Yes, get him the ball. No, keep it. So if this player stays here right now or starts floating to the screen, I'm going to give it. But if he gets up the field right now, I'm going to pull it and throw it out there, right? So he's reading him, and that player kind of makes, he sits there for a while. He makes Hurts indecisive because that guy's not charging. Hurts gives it to him. But the Titans actually do a really good job of playing it, and they don't get, I think they give a 0-yard gain. But again, this is on second and short. I told you the Eagles love RPO on second down, especially second and short situations. So you can see it again where Hurts' eyes are, right? He's looking at that backer out there, and he's asking himself, all right, do I want to throw this? No, he's kind of got leverage out there. He can run to it if I throw that. I'm going to trust my offensive line. I'm going to trust Miles Sanders if that guy wants to add late to break that tackle. The problem is no one ever gets up to this other backer. And so it ends up being a 2-on-1 with that unblocked backer in here. And you can even see this defensive lineman here. Look at that play he makes. Give that big fella credit right there. That's a big-time football play, getting back over the top against the grain and making a play. And that's why it's a 0-yard gain. So, like I said, the RPO, RSO, it's really good. It's been a great deal for the Eagles this year, but it's not an end-all be-all, right? I don't think it's indefensible. And I do think there are ways that you can try and defend it and try and slow it down. And so the Chiefs, they've upgraded their secondary with Trent McDuffie, another rookie. These rookies on defense for the Chiefs have been unbelievable. And then they also have, Justin Reed and Jalen Watson, both the young guys, McDuffie and Watson. I've changed the ability for Chiefs DC, Steve Spagnuolo, to get creative, trust his coverage players in one-on-one matchups, right? And then Justin Reed, he's really taken on the role that Honey Badger had that he left open when he left this offseason. And so much like the Eagles, the Chiefs are well positioned to match up with the Eagles. I think they can do a lot of different things, especially if their D-line can create pressure on Hurts. So I decided to go back and look at a team that did give the Eagles, I think, the most trouble, and that was the Jags in Week 4. The Jags did a lot of stuff where they played a lot of one high looks, even some stuff that started in two high but rolled into one high safety, and then they stuck to receivers. They played a lot of cover 3 match. Remember earlier I said I was going to explain match, so we'll kind of look at that right now. The Jags playing against them with that match look in Week 4. I know this is a while ago, and things have certainly evolved since then, but we'll look at it here. So this is another one that I had to sit here and watch a bunch. I think it's true play action, not RPO. But someone might argue with me. I don't know. I think it's play action pass. If you look at the O-line, looks like they're pass setting to me. But you'll see the Jags, what they're going to play. So on the pull, the Eagles are going to run the Omaha concept to the bottom, where they're going to get a fade with the out route. Then on the backside, you're going to get the follow concept, where you get the double dig, and then they're going to send the back to the flat after the play action fake. The Jags are running cover 3 match. We call it 39 in our defense, but you've got a thirds corner and a thirds corner who are both going to basically match up one-on-one with the two receivers out there. Then you've got 2 carry players who are going to carry verticals and outs. So if number 2 runs an out, he's got him. If number 2 runs a vertical, he's going to carry him outside leverage. If number 2 does anything else, like he goes underneath, then he's going to get out underneath 1. And that's the only time the corner doesn't have a true one-on-one, is if he gets help underneath from that guy. Then you're going to have 2 hook defenders who are going to be doing the same thing. They'll relate to number 3, right? If number 3 goes to the flat, they'll actually chase that on the throw, because your flat defenders are actually carrying verticals. And then you've got your middle of the field safety, right? Who's going to play everything vertical, middle of the field. So you let it play. You can kind of see, right, how the match works out, where this guy's carrying the dig, the corner's on top of the backside dig, safety's playing in the middle of the field. He's reading Hurts' eyes. You've got the carry defender on this side who's going to carry the out. Remember I said they carry outs and verticals. And then this corner who's going to carry his vertical, play his third. And so if you're wondering, like, oh, what if he runs the dig here? Is that defender going to carry him? He is, because we're saying a dig is classified as a vertical. So he's going to carry him across with those hook defenders underneath. That's why 3 match is so good, because you stick to receivers right now. Even though it's zone, it starts as zone, it plays as man. So you'll keep going. Hurts thinks, he can fit this ball in here, right? He can hit the crosser late, but you're going to see this carry defender and the flat defender comes off, and they create a little sandwich, a little 2-on-1. They create the tip up in the air, and then you're going to watch this middle of the field safety who's getting over the top over here. Watch what happens to him. Oop, tip. Oh, skirt. Oh, down the sideline. Jags touchdown. I'm going to tell you, I really like the Jags defense. Topic for another day, but I love what the Jags do defensively. So here, looking at it from the behind, see if the Jags create any pressure up front, right? They're in a heads front, so they're going to be in 2 2s and 2 5s, and they're actually you're going to see both these guys go to the field to like get to an over front. Even though they start and head up, they're going to actually get themselves into an over front on the run. And you'll see why I'm thinking that this is true play action pass. Just the Eagles, the way that they block this. The only person who might make me think it's a little RPO lookish is Kelsey, but Lane Johnson's pass setting, Mailata's quick setting. They're not really looking to work to get up to the second level, and Hurts does not put this in his belly. Like, he's got this the whole time. So unless it was RPO and he saw what he saw so quick that he knew he's pulling it, I just think it was play action pass. And boom, gets it out, get the tip, and we're 88 out the gate down the sideline, right? So this is the kind of thing that I think could give Hurts a little bit of trouble in the game. I don't think it's like a trump card or by any means or anything like that. Like that the Eagles can't counter it if that's what they see. But I do think it's probably what Spags will go to. You have to trust your corners in one-on-one here, but I think like the Eagles defense, that the Chiefs can get this done if they can get the pressure on Mahomes or on Hurts. But even still, with all that being said, I would lean towards the offense here just based on their body of work throughout the season. Hurts' ability to create in the second phase of a play. We saw that last week against the Niners, right? And then combined with, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith playmaking down the field, make those contested catches. You put all that together, I still give the edge to the Eagles offense, but I do think the Chiefs can do some things to make Hurts uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say on paper, just those skill position players are probably some of the best, if not the best, in the whole league. Like you mentioned, they both had 1,000 yards receiving. That's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
And everyone went over three of them went over 700.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I would give an edge to the skill position on paper, but I'm just worried with them throwing the ball because out of the 5 games I mentioned that I looked at, there was only 60% they threw over 200 yards, and one of them was only 208. Like it barely made it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was that Jags game you're talking about. They had 4 rushing touchdowns that game with 200 yards running. So yeah,
Yeah.
and they allowed 2 sacks to the Jags on that one too. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think both teams need to just run the ball, and we'll see from there who truly is gonna take the cake. But pushing forward to the coaches in this game, we got would you do the head coach with the OC and then the DC?
Yeah.
Okay, so we got Andy Reid with Eric Bieniemy calling plays, and then the DC is Jonathan Gannon for them. Is that how that worked? He did.
For the Eagles, yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. So he's the DC for the Eagles.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, and then for the Eagles, they got Nick Sirianni for the head coach, Shane Steichen.
Don't pull a Gronk right now and call him Spikeman. Don't call him Spikeman. It's Steichen.
And then Steve Spagnuolo for the Chiefs DC going against them. So what are your thoughts on these fellas?
Well, I think it's interesting. The structure of both teams is the same, right? They've got the offensive head coach who calls the plays with a collaboration with the offensive coordinator who is really good. Both Eric Bieniemy and Shane Steichen probably don't get enough credit for the work that they put in, and both guys are potentially head coaches in the near future. Bieniemy's been seems like on a short list of black candidates to be a head coach for like 3 or 4 years now, and I mean we know how that's worked out, and I don't want to belabor that, but it is true that he's a dude, man, and hopefully he's a head coach soon. From all accounts, the Chiefs ownership just said something today about Eric Bieniemy being a guy who's ready to be a head coach, and everyone around him has said that. So we'll see if he gets that opportunity soon. But he and Andy Reid are, simpatico. Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, simpatico. And then I like Jonathan Gannon and Steve Spagnuolo. I think both those guys are pretty good DCs. Gannon's a little younger, Spagnuolo's a little older, but I do think there's, and even on the inverse too, the offense, the Chief staff in general is a little bit older, a little more experienced, a little more seasoned. The Eagles staff is a little more younger, invigorating, creative, and the Chief staff is also still very creative, even as they've gotten older in the game. But I just want to start with Andy Reid. Guy's been to the Super Bowl 4 times now, including 2004 with the Eagles, and then the last 3 out of the last 4 years with the Chiefs. He and OC Eric Bieniemy know exactly what gets Patrick Mahomes rolling. Their creativity shows up consistently week in and week out. We saw like the ring around the rosy. We've seen Travis Kelce at quarterback. We've seen the Mahomes underhand stuff. Like we've seen all that, right? And they are certainly going to have something ready for the Eagles defense, given they had 2 weeks to prepare and the ability to exploit certain matchups, I think, in this game. Spags has been masterful in this playoff run at creating one-on-ones for his pass rushers with these different fronts and then trusting his coverage players to win their matchups, which they've been able to do, even these young guys. And I think the experience and the expertise that exists on the Chiefs staff positions them very well in this game. On the other side, you have Nick Sirianni, who should arguably be the coach of the year this year. He's done a really nice job with Shane Steichen at developing Hurts, making him comfortable the last 2 seasons to the point that he's an MVP candidate and All Pro this year. Their RPO looks will make life difficult for Steve Spagnuolo this week, and dictate, I think, some looks that are favorable to them in the pass game. And then DC Jonathan Gannon is well positioned to maintain his consistent 2 high looks versus the Chiefs. I think he'll dare Andy Reid to run the football and take it out of Mahomes' hands. I think you could see kind of different schematic approaches from both defenses in this game. And then, he'll be able to rush 4 a little more often than not, trust his pass rushers to get home. We talked about the talent up front for the Eagles. He's not going to have to bring a whole lot of extra guys and leave himself exposed on the back end. So I think both these staffs, they're here for a reason. I don't think there's like a clear advantage here, but I do think, they're both elite at designing schemes, taking advantage of their best players consistently. But in the end here, I would say the difference is the experience, both in totality and in the Super Bowl specifically. The Chiefs will be prepared to handle this long halftime, the long week of media coverage, the travel to the Super Bowl itself, the extra time in the bye week to prepare. So from all of that, I'm going to give an edge here to the Chiefs.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't know how you were going to round that all up, but definitely, I mean, Hurts, he was one and done last year in the playoffs. Now they're making a run. Like, it all makes sense. Like, the Chiefs, they've been to the Super Bowl 3 times with Patty Mahomes. Or is this the 3rd? I don't remember. But anyways, this is the 4th? 3
Third.
of 4? This is the 3rd?
3 out of 4. 3 out of 4.
So, yeah, I mean, they're definitely conditioned to know what's going on. They have the veterans on there who know exactly what's going to happen. Like, it makes more sense now that you made it that sense of where you're going with this. So, yeah, I could agree. Chiefs are definitely way more prepared for all the extracurriculars going on all week.
Yeah.
Down there in Phoenix. And then, little bonus down here. We got special teams.
Special teams. Yeah, we got to just give a quick shout out to the ST, my college coach. Used to do this thing where he would go, special teams. And then all of us would go, wins games. So that's all I can.
He loves special teams.
Dude, that's all I could think of every time I see special teams is just special teams wins games. Point being, though, in a tight game like this one, you never know what major special teams play could show up and make the difference. Certainly did in the AFC Championship game for Sky Moore's big-time punt return that set up the Chiefs' game-winning drive, Harrison Butker's field goal. Just looking at the kickers real quick, Harrison Butker was 75% on field goals this year, long of 62, 93% on extra points. Jake Elliott, 87% on field goals this year, long of 56, 96% on extra points. You look at the punters. The punter for the Chiefs apparently is the biggest trash talker on the team, according to Frank Clark. Tommy Townsend had an average of 46 yards a punt and a long of 76 yards. And then the Eagles punter, Aaron Sipos, he just returned from IR. He sounds like he's going to be the punter for the game. He had an average of 39.5 yards this year, the long of 59. The Chiefs have a dynamic return duo of Sky Moore, Isaiah Pacheco, 2 rookies who have been awesome. Have kind of helped replace Tyreek Hill a little bit in the return game there with the explosiveness he used to bring. And then the Eagles have another rookie, Britton Covey, along with Boston Scott as their returners. If you look at where these 2 teams ranked in the league in terms of special teams DVOA, according to Football Outsiders, they were both like middle of the league, basically average. So I think either side could make a big game-changing play. I don't really think there's an edge here. I'm going to call this one a draw, which is convenient because that leaves it at a draw right now. We gave the Chiefs offense and coaching and their backers and running backs wins, and then we gave the Eagles O-line, D-line, and skill in quarterbacking and edge. So now with a draw, we're 3-3 and 1 draw. So that makes it convenient.
That tells you where we're at on this game.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, let's see. I'll give you my quick little keys to success. I mean, I could change them up a little bit based off what you've given me so far. But I mean, I said it earlier. I think who can run the ball better, but you could easily say you need the Chiefs to run the ball and you need the Eagles to pass the ball more efficiently. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Uh, we talked about the trenches. I said whose defense can create pressure on the other team's quarterback, and then with that also being said, who could create a turnover or multiple to help get better field position and whatever else you want to consider getting a turnover. But yeah, that's all I wrote down. Very simple. You know, the team that needs to score more points than the other team. You know, they're like, but it's very all true statements. Like I don't. That's just truly
Yeah,
how I feel for these teams. I don't know. Let's see what do you got going in. What are your
yeah,
questions and whatnot for the game?
yeah, I like to do my 3 keys or questions for this game. Number 1, can and will the Chiefs run the football against the Eagles defense? I said it earlier, I think the Eagles will sit in a lot of too high looks. They're gonna dare Andy Reid to run the football in early downs. When teams had the most success against that Eagles defense this year, it usually was running the football. And I think both Andy Reid and Mahomes will need to be patient early because the Eagles are going to do their best at keeping everything in front of them, getting pressure with those 4 guys, that rotation of Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox, Hassan Reddick, Javon Hargraves, Josh Sweat, Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph, Robert Quinn. Like they're going to throw all those dudes at him, all that depth of names and guys who have been here before. And so I think it's going to be very important for the Chiefs to get the run game and even the perimeter screen game going early to take advantage of the Eagles being in those looks, slow their pass rush down, and get themselves into the game. So that's 1. 2, I'm going to ask, will the Eagles win in one-on-one matchups versus this Chiefs secondary? And we talked about the Eagles' heavy RPO looks. Their ability to run the football makes it difficult for the Chiefs to sit in too high. They're going to have to bring that other safety in the box, I think. And I think Spags will have to trust his DBs to play in some one-on-ones. And when that happens, are Brown, Smith, and Goddard going to be able to win that one-on-one as they have pretty much all year against a talented trio of their own for the Chiefs, McDuffie, Snead, and Watson. And like I said, anticipate a lot of 3-match from the Chiefs to counter some of that RPO stuff from the Eagles. And if you're the Chiefs, I think you're okay with making this a track meet. So even if the Eagles hit a couple big explosives on you, but they're not able to run the ball, and you're getting the ball back to Mahomes, and maybe if they're taking a lot of shots, you can create turnovers that way. I think the Chiefs would be okay with that. So where the Eagles, I think, would like to make the Chiefs run the ball, I think the Chiefs would like to make the Eagles throw the ball vertically a lot more than they probably want to. And last but not least here, can the Chiefs narrow the advantage in the trenches enough to allow Mahomes to just win them the game? I think I said in the beginning, the game is going to be won in the trenches. I think it's clear the Eagles have an advantage there. But can the Chiefs generate just enough pressure on Hurts to make a mistake? Can they give Mahomes just enough time up front to get the ball to his playmakers? Like I said, there's this advantage here for the Eagles, but the question is, how big is that advantage? And if the Eagles are dominating both fronts, I could see them dominating the game on the scoreboard. But if the Chiefs can keep it close enough on those fronts, then I think they're in a game where they can allow, the advantage would swing to them because of Mahomes and that factor. And they can allow Mahomes to just put the cape on and go win them the game. So I think those are the 3 major keys to this game. That's how I could sum it up. Chiefs running the ball, Eagles throwing the ball versus one-on-one looks, and the battle in the trenches. Is it a huge advantage for the Eagles or slight advantage? And will that slight advantage then allow Mahomes to go put the cape on? So, Jody, without further ado, are you ready to get to final score? Predictions. Final score for the Super Bowl.
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, I still don't even know. Actually, okay, I'll give you my score, but the way I'm gonna put this is, I would love to see the Eagles win. Granted,
Okay.
I got the jersey on, obviously, but
Yeah. Salty Broncos
I
fan.
think, yeah, and no, at the end of the day, like You saw how bitter I was, how the Chiefs won a week ago and the Bengals didn't make it, and
Yeah,
so at
I
the end of
saw
the
it.
day, it's a spite play, right?
Yeah.
I want the Eagles to win, but I'm pretty sure if I had Doctor Strange right here, right next to me, I'm sure that guy would tell me that there's only one possible way the Eagles are winning. So at the end of the day, 31-27, giving it to the Chiefs.
Wow. Okay, I want to say something real quick. I don't think there's only one possible way the Eagles are winning. I think this is a 50-50 like toss up. I love the Eagles. Last week we both were actually on the Eagles early thoughts. I mean, after seeing them dominate the Niners and thinking about that offensive line, the defensive line, we were both on the Eagles. It was like if anyone's constructed to beat Mahomes, it's this team. However, this game is going to be played indoors on the grass in Glendale. They
Yep.
got the bye week. You got the brilliance of the offensive coaching. I anticipate this being a fun back and forth, high scoring, who has the ball last kind of game. And in the end, as much as I love the Eagles up front, I think I finally landed on the Chiefs here because of Mahomes. I went back and forth on it. I'm talking all week, all weekend. Any moment that I had that was not focused on my job, I was literally looking at this game and trying to figure out who I was going to pick. I watched a ton of tape, like probably an embarrassing amount of tape on this game. And I just think Mahomes is so good that I find it hard to believe he won't get it done like he has. You know, if he has the ball with the chance to win, you're not going to convince me he's not going to get that done. Um, I rewatched the national championship from 2017, and Jalen Hurts in that game was Jalen Hurts in Alabama versus Deshaun Watson in Clemson. And if you remember, Hurts actually scored a touchdown in that game to put Alabama up with like 2 minutes to go. He scored what he thought was the game winner. And then Deshaun Watson came back down and threw the ball to Hunter Renfrow in the end zone for what would be the real game winner. And I hate to say this, but I could totally see that in this game. I could see Hurts being awesome, but just Mahomes ending up with the ball last. And I just think we can get an instant Super Bowl classic where we all win, unless you're a Philly fan. But I'm going to roll with the experience of Andy Reid and Mahomes in the game. I'm going Philly 35, KC 38. High scoring affair. Kansas City wins because they get the ball last.
Yeah, no. If you
Man.
want more insight as to how I landed on the Chiefs, basically the numbers told me the Eagles play well. They play great at times, but it doesn't compare to the greatness of the Chiefs on their offensive side. You know what I mean? They just have way more numbers, and the only thing they do better, they pass the ball way better compared to the rushing attack from the Eagles. And so I don't know. Anything I think of is just it's like thinking of Tom Brady, right? I know
Yeah.
everyone's calling Patty Mahomes a young goat. It's the same thing. This fool, he's gonna get it done no matter what. And that's the only outcome I see happening, but I'd love to see the Eagles win at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm you know, I think the last straw for me that convinced me was looking at all the quarterbacks the Eagles had played and being like, "Oh, the best quarterback they played this year was Aaron Rodgers and the guy scored 33 on him." And the second best quarterback they played was Dak Prescott and he scored 40. The Chiefs are putting up 38 easy. Like
Yeah.
Mahomes is gonna torch them. Obviously it's not that simple, but right, that was like the last thing
Yeah.
when I'd kind of decided I was going with the Chiefs, and then I saw that and I was like, oh yeah, like that kind of cognitive bias, right? Like,
Yeah,
oh
yeah. Just
yeah,
like, oh, that makes perfect sense now.
yeah, yeah. Uh, but yeah, we're at the end here. It's our last game of 2022-23 season. By Sunday at, you know,
Probably
10
this time almost.
30, 10:30 Eastern, it's gonna be about time to turn the page to the off season. So, but we got to finish with a banger of the week, Joe.
Yeah, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I know it's my turn, huh?
I
My
love how
turn.
you never remember. Yeah, it is.
It's my turn. Yeah, it's my turn. All right, all right. Well, let's see. Oh, what song was I listening to the other day? Man, Can't remember.
Okay, well, while you look that up, I could tell you we could do a little callback real quick. You talked about Station 11. I watched my
Oh
first
yeah.
episode the other day. I
What'd you
turned it
think?
on. I thought the first one was pretty good.
Dude,
It got a
keep
little
going.
wild at one point. I lost track of where they were because it was like 5 days before whatever like went down, and then it
Yeah,
was like
it's gonna
80
kind of.
days, and I was like, "Whoa, what just happened?"
Yeah.
But no, I turned it on. Johnny got home. He was like, "What are you watching?" I was like, "Station 11." He just started laughing. He was like, "Oh, is that the Trev?" I was like, "Yeah, bro."
Dude, that makes me feel good. You loved it.
But
All
yeah,
right,
no, that first episode was pretty good. Not gonna lie.
okay, keep watching and report back, bro.
Alright,
All
bet.
right, I got a banger for you. The song I was thinking of, it's not new. It's been out for a couple years, but I just started getting into a little bit of Nas.
Oh, okay.
Started listening to a little Nas, and it's called Spicy. Uh,
Wait.
it's it's from like 2021, but I don't know. I thought it was a banger. I liked it. Download like when you kind of just skip around, you just like listen to new stuff, and then you're like, oh, that is kind of hot.
Yeah.
Like I'm putting that on the library right there.
Yeah, put that
That
in
was
the
that song
playlist.
for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, added it to the library. Spicy by Nas.
Dope, dope, dope. I'll have to check that out right after this. So closing us out, we got our main guy from SD, the
Add
Ray
him to
Riley or
add him
official
to
Ray
the
Riley.
library. Add
Yeah,
him to
add
the
him for
library.
sure. He's got some great songs. He's dropping music videos, and he's taking us out right here.